All right, well, we just got the peak of Scientology and Eagle. I got a flower. Getting back on the trail, and I was able to talk to my buddy from, I think, roughly between 7 and 9 miles away. And we're gonna see what we can see up here. So I'm gonna turn off the phone now and then just use the tablet. All right, well, pretty close to getting hungry. I brought my lunch with me. Got some seared tuna that's frozen and packed. I can let it probably thaw out by now. I won't need a fork anymore because I got a handful of freaking needles from the flower that I picked up. But I'm sure those will bother me for the next couple of days because I think a couple broke off when I was trying to get them out of my fingers. But hey, the things I'll do for prosperity. So I'm gonna roll up the windows because I got the AC on. It's actually starting to cool down. I was trying to talk on my smartphone, talk on the two-way radio, and take video all at the same time. And I am unmistakably a man, and there's only so much multitasking I can do. I might have to bring an editor up here with me and cameraman to make all this make sense one day, but I never have it planned out because today wasn't planned. But I got my stuff that I got online for sale is blowing up for some reason, of course, because I'm not anywhere near where I can sell it. But once I get to the end of this trail, I don't know if this just goes all the way up to the top and stops, or I forgot to ask those guys. I think they came up here, turned around, and came back, but they said there are a lot of washouts to be careful of. I've been through a couple of them, and they weren't anything to write home about. But we look like we peaked in elevation. And what the heck is that? Oh, there's a water tank up here that actually looks familiar. Can't see it because to take this, I think that's what the firemen use up here to get their water for the probably the helicopters, and probably for anybody they drop off to make a fire break. So, but I can't really say it looks familiar because they all look the same. It's just a concrete round tank. It's only about maybe 4 or 5 feet tall at the highest, and it's built into the side of the slope, so they all look the same. That one said number 2 on the side, so number 1 is probably up at the highest elevation. I thought we were plateauing, but it appears that we're still climbing. I'll have to turn on my GPS here probably pretty soon just to see what my elevation is. I got a feeling I'm pushing about 3,000 or 4,000 feet, give or take 1,000. So, but yeah, we're definitely going up. I'm still in 4 low, just kind of cruising. I don't need to be in 4 low, but gear ratio is a little better for the size of the tire to keep me from loading the engine, considering I got the AC on. So, pretty much everything after this will be downhill, so instead of riding the brakes, I'll just use the gears to slow me down. So, well, the trail's getting kind of boring now, so, but we've got some really cool views off to the right, and the left. I can see all of the Lockheed Martin property and facilities. I guess they built a couple new structures over there. I've seen them on the videos I was talking about that the two guys are riding little mini bikes on. I'll try and plug them if I can remember their name. It was something Adventures, I think. But there's a security, a white SUV over there. And I don't feel like finding out how personable he is, especially on a weekend. So we're not going to go over and say hi today. Yeah, hi. I'm going to have you come into work today. You know, we start at 9:30, and you know, if you just want to go ahead and come in. I'm sure he's thrilled about working on the weekend. So, oh, we've got another gate here. It is open. We've got a sign on the other side. And it doesn't say no trespassing. We'll see where this takes us. Maybe we'll end up in Rancho Encino Country Club. I'm not sure. But there is a boundary fence. I don't know if you can see the uprights for it. It's just wired barbed wire, but I think that's just to keep it from falling into the there's a pretty significant ravine there. It's probably about at least between 60 and 100 feet deep, which would be real special to fall into. But I said the road's pretty mellow. I probably could have made it all the way up here in the party car because it has off-road, pretty decent sized tires on it. Now I think it's got roughly 31s, between 28 and 30-inch tires. I'm not going to say 31s. That's kind of excessive. The Mad Max car, Charlotte, she has 31s, I think, on the rear and 30s in the front, and she'd be able to get up here no problem. But I got to do a cooling system upgrade because she's got a smashed radiator, completely hard water pump, and a motor that sounds like a steampunk engine. I'm going to end up putting a Jeep radiator from a Cherokee, which is a really short, wide radiator. I'm going to put it under the package tray where the speakers are normally sitting on top of. That's the plate that kind of holds the what is it, the rear seat back. I'm going to put a radiator because there is no back seat anymore. I've just got a fuel cell back there, which I really should upgrade because I think that car only holds about 6 gallons of fuel, and it's got a little teeny 390 big block in it, running on a 2-barrel carburetor and a mini spool and a C4 transmission. So it tends to gobble up the gas pretty quick. Having that size fuel tank with that size power plant is kind of like handing a marathon runner a Dixie cup to have a drink halfway through his run. So, oh wow. Yeah, I don't think I'll be able to drive through that. Oh, and no. I'll be able to go around it. That would be something. And okay, we're good. So anyways, yeah, I'm probably gonna keep on the path to the road to Wasteland with Charlotte. I was gonna build Lola, which is the 2015 Squash Squad car, which is I have two 2015 Ford Interceptor sedan, EcoBoost twin turbo, all-wheel drive 3.5 police interceptors. One of them is my daily Roxanne, which if you follow my channel, you know about her. And she could go up here, no problem, but I wouldn't say no problem. But Lola I was going to make into a Knight Rider car, like a bad guy. A bad guy car that was stolen from the good guys to be used, and it gets destroyed in the first Mad Max movie. But I don't know. I have my ups and downs with health and energy, and it's going to be a pretty big build to do. It was going to be my one chance at having a street legal Mad Max car that I could actually drive out to Wasteland Weekend. Charlotte, I could make street legal. I got her on offer up as kind of a joke for $5,000. Charlotte's the original Mad Max car that used to race before it was a Mad Max car out at Lake Paris and Night of Destruction. And I think the motor's still sound, but the water pump is screwed, and I don't really like the idea of trying to change out the water pump on a motor that I think is still sound. My luck, I would probably end up changing the water pump, which entails taking the whole front end of the motor apart, which I might as well change the oil pan gasket, oil pumps, and all other stuff. I figure a Band-Aid will be a remote electric water pump that they put in race cars. It's supposed to be a supplemental water pump. There's a couple new cars out there now that have a solely electric water pump that does not use any accessory pulleys from the actual engine or crankshaft. And they mount to the side of the engine kind of like a thermostat housing. And some of them actually run the water through. The race cars that actually use them, they have a water pump that replaces the location of the original water pump with an electric one, which is for horsepower gains. But I would have to take the whole front of the motor apart just to utilize an aftermarket like Edelbrock or I think rapid flow electric water pump. So what I'm going to do is going to leave the original water pump with whatever impeller that's left inside of the engine cooling system. I'm going to just leave that inert. It's not going to be connected. It's not going to be hooked up. I'm going to just, the weep hole is actually leaking on the pump, and the pulley that the pump is actually spinning around is literally looks like it's ready to fall off. So I'm probably going to take that pulley and cut it off with an angle grinder and fill the end of it with JB Weld, fill the weep hole with JB Weld, still use it as kind of an integral part of the cooling system. Coolant will still flow through it, but the lower radiator hose is going to go into a piece of black PVC pipe, which I'm going to run the length of the interior of the car on the interior, probably right next to the hump that goes along where the transmission and drive shaft go. I'm going to run it back to the bottom of the radiator. I'm not going to use a thermostat, which I haven't used a thermostat the whole time. I just have a little restrictor plate in the thermostat housing. And then, so I'm going to run that to the lower end of the radiator with the pump in line, which is going to be the same inside diameter of the inside of the original radiator hoses. And then that's going to go to the bottom of the Jeep radiator, which is going to have cooling fans mounted to it with a switch. The water pump is going to be hooked to a switch. I'm going to have a thermostat control, probably maybe an override. So the thermostat will control the speed and flow of the water pump, but I'll be able to bypass. What will happen is if I shut the car off, like I said, I need to completely shut down. When I shut the ignition off, the water pump will shut off too. because in case I get a coolant leak or some issue with rapid electrical drain, which is the other thing, I'm going to run two deep cycle batteries or two Optima batteries. Oh, I got some shade here. It's a good place to eat my lunch or dinner, actually, at 6 o'clock. When I come back, if I go back this way. So I'm going to be able to shut everything down at once, but I'm going to have an override switch. Oh, there must be another tank over here, because I'll show you what one of those little boxes that I saw before. As if I drive towards it, I won't need to take the tablet off of its mount. I bet you the water tank is up on top of this hill. So I don't know if you can see it in the shade. There's a box right there. So that box is probably a low point attachment or float or some type of monitoring thing for a tank up there. Oh, there's the tank. So the tank is right, in case you can't see it, is right there. So I'm going to climb up the top of this hill just because I'm already committed. So anyways, I'm going to have an override switch so I can turn the pump on and leave it on even when the car's not running. So if I've run the car up some hills or gone off-roading with it and put a lot of load on it, because I don't have lower gears, I'm actually tempted, instead of changing the gears in the rear, which would be kind of pricey. Oh, okay, so this doesn't go anywhere, and I don't want to chew up a bunch of vegetation. So, which is going to give you a better view. Let's turn this way. But I'm going to be able to run the water pump by itself to flow the coolant through the whole cooling system in the radiator and the cooling fans. I might not have to run the cooling fans. That would be probably unnecessary, but it might help if I really need to cool the motor down. I need to find out which realistic to run as a pressure cap, because the radiator that I'm using, I don't remember it has a radiator cap. Some Jeeps and a lot of other vehicles have a sealed system with no radiator cap. They just have an overflow container which is sealed with a sealed cap, and that cap actually works as the cap you fill the system with. So if that's the case, I'm going to mount the cap somewhere where it's realistic for me to get to, and if it does overheat or start to get hot, since I'll have the water pump and the fans are going to be on a mandatory switch anyway. So every time I turn on the motor, I'm going to turn on the fans manually, kind of like a trophy truck or a race truck. And of course the water pump will be flowing water when the ignition is on, but it's going to go through a controller, which I know it sounds funny to do all this technical stuff with a beat up post-apocalyptic Mad Max car that has a questionable engine, but because I don't have low gears, I actually kind of end up taxing the motor a bit when I'm cruising around real slow with really big tires. So if I have a water pump with an actual controller, what that does, not only it lengthens the lifespan of the pump, because the pump won't run full bore all the time. It'll only run full bore when it's thermostatically told that, hey, we need to run the fan. Plus it's going to give me a digital readout of the temperature of the motor and cooling system and the rate in which the fans demand, or the pump's demand is at. So it gives me active, verifiable information that I really do need to keep that motor alive. What I'm going to do to try and alleviate the strain on the motor without swapping out rear ends. I've already got a mini spool in the back, and that rear end is really stout. The transmission is built really good. It's got a new transmission I've never had an issue with. I've crashed that car into stuff so hard that I folded the front end up and broke the cone off the front of the starter, and destroyed the steering linkage. And I mean, I've wrecked that car so bad during those races. So I don't want the radiator in the front anymore. So this whole system I'm going to put in is going to alleviate that. I'm going to have the stock rear end with stock gears with 31-inch tires, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a truck that has a divorced transfer case, which what that means is instead of having a transfer case that's actually attached to the back of the transmission, which I'd actually have to change transmissions, which I don't want to do because my transmission is fine. I get a transfer case out of a light-duty truck or even a heavy-duty truck that has a drive shaft going to it from the original transmission, and then a drive shaft from it to go back to my rear end. And then I'll also have a forward output that would normally go to a front axle, which, considering all this damage I told you about that I have on the front of the car, my steering is questionable. I could put a straight axle with some leaf springs under the front of the car and actually have four-wheel drive, but the main reason to have the divorced transfer case is so I have a low range. So without anything connected to the front, I can run the transfer case in two-wheel drive and only run the back drive shaft. If I run the transfer case in 4-low, the front output from the transfer case will be spinning, but it won't be connected to anything. But that does give me a whole lot of options because it's almost like a power takeoff. So in other words, if I have the transfer case in 4-low or even 4-high, I have an output that's not being used on the front, and until I do a 4-wheel drive conversion, which I probably will never do, I could actually hook an AC generator. And this is funny because me and my buddy Lee, when we took it, oh, wait, let me see if that's Lee. Hey, can you hear me on your radio? Okay, so we were driving around the Slug Bug truck, which is a little white 2003 Vantage pickup truck or dump truck that I'm selling on OfferUp, and people are just really being stingy. Oh wow, what is this? I'm gonna have to use a little bit of momentum because that's kind of right. Hold on. Ooh, wow. Hold on. Oh, that was scary. I don't know if you can tell on the video, but that was a drop-off and a washout that the guys warned me about, and I had to kind of boogie across it in case it was loose. So we were driving that around, and I was showing there's an air conditioner button on the dashboard. Well, I said, "Oh, the AC works," and he said a term that Captain Kirk said on Star Trek to convert the Enterprise to all AC power. And whoa, I don't think I'm gonna be driving past this. And what's cool is I've got a couple of Onan generators sitting around that are really old, and the engines still run on them, and the AC generators still work on them, but they're just these big, huge kind of dinosaurs. Hold on a minute, I gotta concentrate a little bit. These big, huge dinosaurs of generators that I really have no use for, because all the generators I need for Sandy, which is the big bus I'm going to be converting into a schoolie or like a mobile studio apartment. Oh, there's another big hole. what I can do is, there's actually on these Onan generators where the flywheel is, there's a place to put a companion flange to hook a drive shaft to. I'm assuming for a PTO unit of some sort, but I can do a like a hot start valve, decompression valve deal on the engine of the generator, or remove the engine altogether and have that AC generator, the front of the generator with no engine, just the part that produces AC. I could mount that relatively close to the transfer case or with a drive shaft if there's room, and actually produce AC power when I'm running the truck in 4 high or 4 low. Now, I don't know how many RPM I have to spin to actually generate reliable AC power, and I don't have a way to disconnect the rear drive from the rear wheels. But hey, there's a tower over here. If I even wanted to, I could just put jack stands under the back of the car, put the car in a high gear just to drive, and set the throttle with a hand control, just have the rear wheels spinning, and have the generator running and have AC power. Now, am I going to do that? No, but I just love thinking of doing things like that because I'd have a mobile AC power station. Which I could do, or I could run a winch. I could run a hydraulic winch or even a gear winch. Oh, that hole was bigger than I expected. Which, having a 2-wheel drive, 4,000 or 5,000 pound grandma car with no lift except for the tires, and going out goofing around with it, it would be nice to have some way to extract myself to pull 4,000 or 5,000 pounds of stuck weight out of a hole. The other thing I could do with it would be, since I'm not going to have a water pump on the front of the motor, the only thing I need to run off of the harmonic balancer pulley, I absolutely need power steering. Unless I change steering boxes and go to a manual steering box, which actually is very beneficial for things I'm doing. I think if I were to convert over to 4-wheel drive and put a straight axle on the front, I'd probably go get a steering box out of a manual steering truck and use that for the steering, because that eliminates 2 or 3 issues. I don't have to worry about throwing a power steering belt. I don't have to worry about a power steering line breaking. I don't have to worry about the power steering pump just failing. And if I have the transfer case in 4-wheel drive, 4 high, that output shaft on the front of the transfer case is going to be spinning at the same speed that the vehicle is traveling. I could hook an alternator, a really big alternator, to that, either direct to the pulley without using a pulley and a belt, which again eliminates a point of failure. Or I could run a belt drive to it. I could even run a belt drive to a hydraulic steering pump and have a hydraulic winch, like a mile marker wrench that runs off of hydraulics. So I have this infinite number of options if I put a transfer case in there. For one, to take the load off of the engine, to give me a lower, like a crawl ratio, or just lower final drive, or technically higher final drive ratio, but lower gearing to the rear wheels. So if I'm doing something like I'm doing right now in the Jeep, which I'm running in 4 low right now, because it just makes sense. I'm running the air conditioning. I've got a bunch of chargers going. I'm charging the tablet I'm talking on. I'm charging my smartphone. I'm running my 2-way radio. I've got an amplifier for my stereo. I'm running the headlights because That's what they're saying to do out here. You know, there's just so many things that I'm running at one time. I might as well let the RPMs stay up a little bit and take the load off the engine. My engine right now is at about 200 degrees on the temperature gauge. My voltage is about 12.9, almost 13 volts. Hey, can you hear me now? So, that's just, a lot of people are like, oh, you don't want to run your truck in four-wheel drive unless you need it. You're going to wear out parts. You're going to mess up the drivetrain and whatever. And I am way up in the air. I'm going to have to do a U-turn up here so you can see how high I am. I can actually feel the elevation in my ears and in my sinuses. I don't know how high I am right now, but I'm freaking up there. So having a transfer case in a two-wheel drive vehicle actually has a ton of benefits. I mean, I could run a belt drive Gatling gun if I wanted to, as long as I'm driving along. Now, if I modify the transfer case, they do make kits, or you can do it yourself by cutting some output shafts in the transfer case. So let's say if I want just front wheel drive and a four wheel drive, they do make a kit to, I think I'm gonna eat up here. This is just a good spot. Actually, I was pointing a better direction before, but yeah, I'm gonna take a little dinner up here and turn off the camera. But anyways, these are all these crazy dreams that Brad has to do with a Mad Max car, and they're off-road. These are all from RVs to boats to rock crawlers to race trucks, race cars. All this technology you can use for a post-apocalyptic vehicle that you might need in a bug-out situation where, not necessarily the end of the world, but the end of the world for some people as we know it, who are completely and solely dependent on social media, the internet, just average everyday Joes that rely on technology for everything. Now I'm using technology to my advantage without being a techie. But I want things that are safe from an EMP, which is electromagnetic pulse. I carry a full set of ignition parts for this truck that we're in right now, because this is my bug out vehicle. It is by no means as would I say intimidating as my Mad Max car. My Mad Max car could do a lot more damage if it needed to. If I needed to drive through a parking lot full of pissed off Walmart shoppers who can't understand why they can't buy their food and their groceries and everything they need, and they're just blocked up and I need to get out because somebody knows I got stuff that they don't, that car will drive through other cars. I could drive through a parking lot full of cars, probably with my eyes closed, end up at the other end and still be running and driving and mobile. This Jeep, not so much. But if I could make that car as capable off-road as this Jeep, even close, and it's not that this shit's gonna happen. I don't know if it'll happen in my lifetime. I don't know if it'll happen in somebody's kid's lifetime, but if you don't know how to be prepared for something that might not happen, if it happens or when it happens, you're pretty much screwed. That's all I gotta say about that. I'll talk to you guys in a bit. Thanks for watching. Oh, I really need to eat.